6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Hello, everyone. A very big good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you joining us from different corners of the world. Thank you so much for joining us for the June segment of the Road to SheTrades Global Training Program. And as some of you may know, the theme for this month is environmental sustainability and climate change. So we began with a very, very enriching webinar thanks to our experts in-house at Green to Compete, where we spoke about the impact of climate change, what are the risks presented, and how you as women entrepreneurs and SMEs can be more resilient. And today we're taking it, a notch higher, if I may say. So we have a very exciting lineup of speakers, and I don't want to take much time because I'm very excited to hear from them myself. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our moderator for today. So we have Ms. Annegret Proust. She was already with us last week as well. So thank you, Annegret, for being with us again today and facilitating this discussion. She's working with us at International Trade Center as the coordinator of Green to Compete initiative. But before joining ITC, she's also worked in the energy practice sector in China, for instance, advising Chinese investors in their overseas investment decisions. She holds degrees in business administration from Tübingen University and Chinese studies from the University of Oxford. Annegret, thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and I pass the floor to you now.
Thank you very much, Kriti. It's a great pleasure really to be here with all of you today and to discuss with you about the important and really urgent topic of the transition to a green economy. Before introducing our really exciting panel of today, I simply would like to start by referring to a common question. What is it when we talk about the green economy? I guess if you ask someone in the street, he or she would talk about an economy that does not only prioritize profit making, but one that also puts people and the planet at its core. And for companies engaging in a green economy, this can mean both, to manage environment-related risks, to survive the impacts of climate change, but even more importantly, it also means to realize the business opportunities of going green. And this is exactly the topic of today. For a lot of companies, climate change and the green economy are more than only buzzwords. Over the past years, companies have started to experience the effects of climate change at different ends. For instance, climate risks in operations, changing consumer demands, stricter regulation, you name it. And many companies have invested themselves to be part of the solution and to really implement green business practices, because they also see this as a great new business opportunity and also to be fit for future. So the panel today will discuss the different ways that businesses, whether small or large, can contribute to the acceleration of the green transition and how they can benefit from being climate resilient and nature positive enterprises. Whilst, and that's important of course, encouraging inclusive participation of women, youth, and other groups. So for this, we will look at concrete examples of small businesses, of multinational companies, and international organizations. All of them are represented in our panel today. So I'm very glad to introduce you now to our speakers. First, we have Morten Bo Christensen, who is the Vice President and Head of Decarbonization at Maersk, the world's largest integrated shipping company. He's an expert in the strategic development of companies, having worked at different leading positions, such as Head of Strategy at Maersk, as well as Principal at Boston Consulting Group. Second, we have Charlene Arisa Putri, the co-founder and CEO of Newsantics. Newsantics is a company active in relation to the microbiome, and Charlene has made sustainability and inclusiveness a key theme of her personal and professional development. I'm very curious to hear from her the insights on these topics and how this really relates to the microbiome. So finally, we have Anne-Catherine Zotz on our panel. She's working for the International Trade Center as the manager of the Green to Compete hubs and projects. Through the insights from her work with small businesses in developing countries and serving at different UN organizations and development banks over the past years, she's really an expert in what it means for the small businesses in developing countries to go green. So with this, thank you very much to you all for being here today. I'm very curious to see how our discussion will take us. A warm welcome also to our audience who is watching this panel online. After the discussion with our speakers, there will be time for Q&A. So please do feel free to use the chat function here in Zoom to pose your questions so that we can select from them. So with this, let's directly start off with the discussion. And I first turn to you, Morten. My first question is in the context of private multinational companies. They have been trying to become role models in meeting carbon targets in line with the Paris agreements. And very timely, you were recently appointed to lead Maersk's decarbonization efforts. So could you share some insights with us on how Maersk as a multinational company is approaching decarbonization?
Yes, thanks very much, Anne-Grethe, and thank you very much for inviting me. So we are not exactly a small company, also not a new company. We are more than 100 years old and around $50 billion of revenue and 80,000 colleagues around the world. We're present in 120 countries, and we are basically supplying all sorts of logistic services to our customers. I think we are mostly known for our container fleet. So I think wherever you are, you will probably have seen one of our boxes on a truck or on a ship somewhere. So that's kind of what we do. It also means, of course, that we emit a lot of CO2. And therefore we have been part of the same as we all have as consumers, but we have certainly been part of creating the climate crisis that we are in. And the way we think about that is that I think over the last couple of years, I think we have actually, same as most actually, kind of begin to think about it in a different way. I think if you go 5-10 years back, we would still think it was a very important, sustainability initiative that you would want to do. The way we think about that now is that it's an absolute strategic imperative to solve the problem. And why has that changed? And again, why have we seen such an uptake in this awareness around climate, the climate crisis? And I think it's really that if you look at the report from something like the IPCC, so the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, they talk about these tipping points of the different climate systems where things turn from bad to catastrophic. And when that was introduced 20 or so years ago, then it was the perception that catastrophe would be sort of around the 5 to 6 degree increase kind of territory, meaning that, even if you were at 3 degrees, you'd still be in kind of a safe zone. There would be some adverse effects, obviously, but, that was actually the thinking 20 years ago. And when we look at the data and when we look what is going on in the Amazonas, in the Arctic, the ice is melting, the permafrost is thawing, the coral reefs are dying. The recent report from the IPCC actually concludes that 3 degrees is most likely a complete disaster scenario. So disaster in the sense that we can no longer inhabit our planet. I mean, at least that's quite likely. And it means that we're just no longer in the safe zone. We're no longer in the safe operating zone. And that means that you need to have a mindset of emergency here. This is a crisis and you need to solve it. And I think the thing that we have realized is that, just having a 2050 vision that, and wave your arms around that makes you feel good, it's just not good enough. You need to do something this decade. And you mentioned the Paris Agreement. If you want to reach the 1.5 degree scenario, it basically means you need to halve your emissions every decade and eliminate it in the last, right? So half towards 30, another half out towards 40, and then you should be done by 50. Then we actually have a chance of the 1.5 degree scenario, which is still bad, but at least not catastrophic, we think. So that's why the mindset has shifted from sort of, yes, we sure need to do it, to we just have to do it. I mean, there's no other way. And I think that's very important also for all of you to understand, because this is daunting upon more and more companies. We are feeling the pressure from our customers that we ship for, I mean, anybody in the world who ships in any large quantity, they ship with us to some extent. So we have all the biggest, consumer companies amongst our customers, and they are putting pressure on us to say, what are you going to do about it, right? I mean, if you're Nike and you have your sneakers sewn up in Vietnam or wherever, and then you have them shipped to South Africa or the US or wherever, I mean, how are you going to solve that problem for us? So we are seeing that. We are seeing investors asking increasing questions. And we are seeing the financing community actually also beginning to show great interest in this. So what that means is that you simply, I mean, if you do not consider this problem 10 years from now, you're going to be out of business. So if you want to build your businesses to be sustainable and profitable and growing, I mean, this, honestly, this is the biggest business opportunity that there has ever been. And why do I say that? Because as dire as it sounds, and it really is, I mean, we've put ourselves in a pretty bad situation, right? But given that there's so much business opportunity in solving the problem, that's really the good news here. And I would encourage you all to see, I think you mentioned that I used to work for BCG. They have actually released a TED Talk with a German partner called Jens Burkhardt. And Jens, he talks about what's actually the cost of making things carbon neutral. And he takes the example of a car in Germany, 30,000 euros. And he then asks the question, so how much would it cost if you actually could produce it in a carbon neutral way? You cannot, because you cannot buy the green steel, you cannot buy the green plastics and so on. But if you could, and if it sort of would cost what we think it would cost, right? How much more expensive would a 30,000 euro car be? I don't know if anybody has an idea and are willing to lean in and say, how much more would that car cost? So we are talking about the steel, carbon neutral, not offsetting, carbon neutral steel, carbon neutral plastic, carbon neutral, everything, transportation, the whole shebang. How much on top of a 30,000 euro car? Come on, someone must, otherwise I'll just throw you under the bus, Annika.
Anyone in our audience that would like to post a guess in our chat? Charlene and Catherine.
I saw the results of the study.
Okay, then it's not fair. Okay, right. No, but the reality is most people say, ooh, it'll be 50% more expensive or twice the price or whatever. The reality is it would be 500 euros more expensive. 500 euros on a 30,000 euro car. I don't know if any of you bought a car recently, if you bought it in a different color or with some alloy rims or leather interior or whatever people pay for extras, but a lot of people spend more than 500 euros on extras. So, and if you really believe in that, just imagine what premium that car could command if you sold it in California or in Sweden or one of these places where there's high willingness to pay, right? I mean, if you really believe in that study by BCG, they basically conclude that all consumer products will be somewhere between 1% and 4% more expensive. If you believe in that, then this is quite simply the biggest business opportunity that you will ever see in your careers. And that's really how you should think about this. This is not a burden. This is, and hey, by the way, it's not for you to fix. It's big companies like us who created the problem, right? But for you, it is a huge business opportunity because there will be many, many customers, consumers, companies who are looking for solutions to this problem. And they're willing to pay. We see that from our customers. We are willing to pay. So I really think that the best you can do for yourself, whatever, whether you know, we are talking a lot about green fuels because that's what we need for our vessels, but there's so many aspects of this. It could be visibility, it could be all kinds of aspects. You should simply think about the business that you have, that you are in. How can you greenify that? I will guarantee you, you will not regret that. So as dire as it is, I mean, it is just a fantastic opportunity for all of us, really. But the train is leaving the station now, and if you want to get on it, you know, you better start thinking about it. Yeah. But you will not regret it.
Martin, thank you very much for setting this background. I wished you could be in all of our workshops wherever we go, because you didn't see, obviously, but I got goosebumps when you were talking about the impacts of climate change on our planet, etc. So really, thank you very much for making this so graspable. I think very practical. I was wondering, now you've talked a lot about, you know, what this means for businesses, etc., that there's a huge opportunity around it. How is Maersk approaching this? Like, what concrete activities do you see for your company?
Yeah, so that's a super good question. And I think, again, we are a big company. We have many resources. We have a strong balance sheet and so on. So in many ways, things are easier for us, right? Because you can sort of have some people look at. If you're a small company, you don't have, but still, the way we thought about it was really to say, okay, so we just start by realizing that this is a huge problem and it needs to be solved. And if we don't solve it, we will become irrelevant for our customers, and that's not good for anyone. Next step, you try to figure out, okay, what can you actually do from a technology perspective? Because we all know it's going to be technology that solves this for us. And what you will soon realize is that technology can solve most of this already. I mean, we don't have to invent a whole lot of new stuff. And again, I didn't study every sector in the world, but whether it is steel, in Sweden, they are building green steel factories now. And by the way, it's selling like hotcakes. The steel is more expensive, but everybody wants to buy it. And you can, because you can just use hydrogen instead of coal when you make your steel, and so on. There are a couple of sectors that are challenging, but most of the technologies, they are here already, and it's mostly about scaling. So that's what we also realized. We realized that our biggest problem is our vessels, because they actually burn 10 million tons of fuel oil every year. That's just mind-boggling. We looked at what are the alternatives to burning fossil fuel. And we realized that you can either burn methanol, which is an alcohol, or ammonia, which is a gas. I'm not going to go into the technical details, but if you burn it today, those products are actually also made from fossil fuel. So if you just bought it on the market today, let's say we bought some alcohol, methanol, and burned it, it would not be any better, because there would have been a lot of emissions in producing the methanol. But methanol can be produced either from biomass or from this so-called power to X, where you use renewable energy and you make hydrogen and then you turn it into methanol. So, I mean, and those technologies are very well known, have been known for many, many years. They haven't scaled because the problem, but then again, you realize, wow, this problem can actually be solved. I mean, we can actually still use combustion engines on our vessels. In fact, the vessels we have can actually be retrofitted to sail on a carbon neutral fuel. So you realize, hey, it can actually be done. Okay, next problem. So let's buy some of that stuff. And then we realize that you can't, because all the methanol that's out there today is made on either natural gas or coal. Okay, then let's solve that problem, right? And then, so what we are now working on is trying to really get some projects started that can produce this green methanol at a cost that is reasonable. We know it's going to be more expensive than oil, of course, but we need it to be sort of reasonable, and that can be done. It's hard work, but it can be done. So I think, and again, this is I don't think very many of you are running a shipping company. At least I would be surprised. But whatever business you run, just start by asking yourself the question: what kind of problem can I solve for a customer that relates to this? What kind of problems do my customer have? And again, I will almost guarantee you, if you can solve a problem for them in this space, they will pay you. Maybe they won't pay you enough, but they will pay you. And then you try to figure out what's the technology. Okay, you will most likely realize it's there. And then you just need to ask yourself the question, okay, how do I make it work? And it sounds super simple, and of course it's not. But again, I mean, if enough people do like this, it will happen. And there is really some space to be conquered here now. I live in Copenhagen in Scandinavia. I think here we are relatively progressed. I mean, the green steel is in Sweden, and we have a lot of offshore wind and so on. So I think we are fortunate in there is a big ecosystem of companies and colleagues and what have you that you can be inspired by. So, and you are in many places of the world, obviously, but hey, just look for it. I mean, it's out there. So I think that's really the mindset you should have. And then, of course, whatever your problem is, some are easy to solve, some not. But again, if you can solve them, you have yourself a business.
Yeah, interesting, because you talked about the role of technology that relates to innovation, of course. And I know that Maersk, you're also a very big supporter of our SheTrades initiative, which is, of course, supporting women in developing countries. So I'm wondering, how do you see the role of women in this context of technology? Yourself, you studied civil engineering. What role do you see for women? How do we need to support them?
I can just say that of the most talented people in my organization, most of them are women. This is actually a space that attracts. So I work in shipping, and it's an industry that unfortunately is very heavy on male. For whatever reason, logistics is not that exciting to most women. But actually this space here, which is actually more in the innovation space, in the chemistry space, there's actually a lot of female talent. And I think if you look at the engineering schools, chemical engineering and so on, there's typically actually an overweight of women for whatever reasons. So there's a ton of opportunity here, and it's just about being innovative and there are a lot of companies starting up in this space. So we try to really tap into this startup environment in all places of the world, and there are some areas where it's more concentrated than others. And we also want to invest in companies who bring innovative solutions to bear, whether it is about an innovative way to make the fuels, or whether it is a visibility solution. So how can our customers better see their emissions, or whether it's an efficiency solution or whatever. And there's a lot of companies out scouting for innovative companies. So I think this is an area where there are at least equal opportunities for women. Actually, I think we will see more. I mean, that's at least what I'm seeing. And also the recruitments that we have made lately are, I think, 80% women actually. So this is really an area that for whatever reasons, I don't understand them, but this is just an area and a space that seem to attract a lot of female talent, and I think that's wonderful. That's another reason why I think it will be solved quickly.
That's very encouraging to hear with also very female panel today. And I think, Martin, also what you just talked about is a very, very good bridge to our next speaker, Charlene, because she's a woman, founded her own enterprise in a very technical area. So Charlene, welcome to the panel here. Can you provide more background on your company, Microbiome? What does it mean? How does it relate to biodiversity, human well-being? A lot of questions to ask.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, thank you, Annegret. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene. I'm from Nusantics. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nusantics, a biotechnology startup from Indonesia, developing countries, as you mentioned before. So our business is basically providing microbiome diagnostic service as well as selling microbiome-friendly products. But what is microbiome? So to simply put, microbiome is an ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, virus, as well as archaea. So in the past, we used to think human as a single species, and it's always a war between us and bacteria and virus because we think they always bad for our health. But due to the genomics technology advancement in the last 10 years, we finally realized that we human is not a single species. In fact, we are a holobiome. So it means that more than 50% of our body cells belongs to microbiome. And the irony is we need them to live. So without them, we die. How so? Because when our microbiome in our body is diverse and balanced, it means that we have better immunity and resilience. For example, in the midst of the pandemic, the one who has better gut microbiome balance survive better. For example, like this. And the simple question is how to keep our microbiome diverse and balanced. The message is very simple. In nature, microbiome is naturally occurring in water and soil. The majority is in water and soil. So when the microbiome in soil is diverse and balanced, they are able to sequester the CO2 from the atmosphere, keep it below the ground, maintain the earth temperature. And then when the microbiome in the water body is diverse and balanced, they are able to degrade the wastewater and keep our water clean. But when this microbiome is not balanced and less diverse, they are losing their ability to grow crops, to sequester this carbon dioxide, as well as to provide the clean water. And what makes the microbiome in water and soil becoming degrading every day? It is because the consumer products that we use every day, for example, the residue of our liquid detergent, of our skincare, the waste from the plastic, from the packaging, everything that we consume will definitely shift this gentle equilibrium of the microbiome balance in soil and water. So that's why we emphasize the importance of delivering accurate yet affordable microbiome detection, as well as educating the market the importance of buying a consumer goods which is microbiome friendly. So we will provide consumers with a more conscious option of microbiome friendly products, and our vision is that one day everyone will buy everything based on their microbiome balance. For example, in Indonesia, our soil is naturally diverse in terms of microbiome, and it means every fruits that grow in our Indonesian soil will naturally have better and richer probiotics on that fruits. And when you consume richer probiotics on your diet, it means that you introduce yourself into a better source of microbiome. Your gut microbiome will become more balanced and diverse, and that also means that your immunity will be better. So microbiome is very important because it's like the unseen power that keeps us together and keep this planet alive. We even cannot live in Mars if Mars cannot provide a correct ecosystem for the microbiome in their soil.
Thank you for
that's a background about Nusantics.
Yeah, very interesting, because I think it's a topic which not many of us will actually know about, and it's really interesting to see how such a technical topic is very easily translates into something very practical also for the environment, right? There is a great connection in there. I'm also interested in your own story. As a woman, you already worked in as an engineer for multinational companies. I'm interested, how did this idea generate in yourself to become an entrepreneur yourself in such a technical area?
Yeah. So my first encounter with microbiome actually started when I start my career as a chemical engineer in one of the multinational company that focus on sustainability. I was engaged in this wastewater treatment project, and I realized that there is a strong correlation between the effluent quality, wastewater effluent quality, and the microbiome diversity. So when I see the wastewater reactor, when the microbiome is diverse, the wastewater effluent become more clearer, and it's practically turns the wastewater into clean water. So there is a strong correlation between diversity and the ability to degrade the wastewater. And then when I work at the coffee plantation, I was also like surprised when the soil microbiome is more diverse, the soil become more fertile, and the taste of coffee is just better. But the critical moment came when I gave birth to my son. I was curious because why is the baby who was born in cesarean operation are more prone to allergies and eczema? And after I did some research by interviewing doctors and reading the scientific journals for fun, I was shocked to find out that the skin and gut microbiome of the baby is very critical in order to build their long-term immunity. And I was shocked that the microbiome profile of the baby that was born from cesarean section and the vaginal birth is very different. The vaginal birth is better because there is a transfer from the mom's microbiome to the baby skin microbiome. And then I also realized that the diverse diet, especially in the early years, like in the 0 to 2 years of the baby, is very critical, because the diverse diet will make the baby gut microbiome become diverse and they have better immunity. But the irony is, the most of the baby product, let's say processed food, as well as the infant formula, was not designed to be microbiome friendly. For example, we put so many sugar and protein in the infant formula, which hope that the protein is good for muscle building, for example, like that. But the fact is, the protein cannot be degraded by the gut bacteria, and that's why if you make a transition from the breastfeeding into infant formula, you may find out that your baby will develop some constipation or allergies, and that was a very eye-opening moment for me. So at that time, I was convinced that this microbiome understanding is really important because it's literally explain everything that we haven't understand so far, particularly about the immunity spectrum and non-communicable diseases. And that's when I decided with my friends building Nusantics. So at that time we were confused because, as you know, Indonesia is a developing country and our understanding towards science still limited. So although we have options like introducing microbiome to the agriculture sector or directly to the health sector or pharmacy sector, and then we realized that the most powerful education is through something that is familiar and easy to understand. So at that time, we identified that those market is beauty market, because the beauty market in Indonesia is very huge and everyone is scared about their skin condition. Everyone wants to have a healthy glowing skin, and healthy and glowing skin is also a function of a balanced skin microbiome. So that's why our first product of Nusantics was on skin microbiome sector. But then pandemics happens, and that's why we have to develop quickly and then to be more relevant and helping Indonesian government to fight pandemics. We also produce like local RT-PCR test kit, which is the most accurate in the market. So after we are able to produce those test kits, the RT-PCR testing become more affordable in Indonesia and the testing rate is improved. So pandemics is like a blessing in disguise for us, because not only we grew the revenue from $0 to millions, but also because we indirectly able to communicate how important this microbiome is to Indonesian market.
Yeah, it's interesting because personally, I only thought of microbiome as something in your stomach. But you really made it clear that, it's all over.
Yes.
The story that you were telling about yourself really sounds, like a natural progression, step by step, and then you suddenly had this amazing company. But obviously, I imagine that there were, challenges along the way that you have, had to master. So I'm wondering, could you give us some insights? I'm sure our audience is interested. What were those challenges, and what was key for you? Maybe also in respect, to being a woman. What was key for you also to master those challenges?
The biggest challenge for Nusantics is actually to communicate what is microbiome and why it's matter. Because it's very difficult, because people here are love social science more than life science or natural science, right? So in this case, women play a big advantage. We have big advantage. Why? Because as I always describe to my team, life science is both combination of art and science, and it is very complex. And even though I say complex, mastering complexities itself and translating into understandable communication requires key traits. For example, like it requires empathy, it requires less judgment, as well as nurturing and try to connect and understand the consumers. And those traits is more common to be found in women. So that's why, like, it is very natural for Nusantics to have 74% of our scientists to be women, because women is just like naturally understand complexities and they are just natural good communicator.
Yeah, I have the feeling that after this panel, both Morten and Charlene will get a lot of applications from women.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Charlene. That
Bring them on, please.
Bring them on.
Thank you.
Here we go. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm sure later in the Q&A there will be more questions to your very interesting story that you just told us. And actually, you also made a very interesting bridge to Anne-Catherine, because you also talked about the textile sector, sometimes the pollution that can come out in terms of sludge, wastewater, etc. And I know that Anne-Catherine has been working in this area. So yeah, Anne-Catherine, you really work closely with small businesses, including women-led businesses in developing countries. And my question to you is, more from the risk side, what climate risks do these businesses face, and what is the effect on those companies?
Yeah, thank you very much, Annegret. And again, also thanks a lot for Morten and Charlene. I think we were listening very, very closely to both of your contributions. Coming to your question, and also a bit relating to the background, basically, Morten said on how climate change impacts our world and will impact even further our world if we go towards, let's say, more drastic scenarios of climate change. I think the most important we need to mention is that our SMEs we work with are mostly already impacted. So the risks you asked me about, Annegret, actually are real impacts already, and they are already, of course, inhibiting growth. They are inhibiting the smooth, let's say, processing and production of those companies we work with. And these are found around the globe. So developing countries basically are impacted, and so are the small and medium-sized businesses, and especially, of course, also smaller companies led by women. And when we look at the impacts, we see most commonly actually droughts and flooding. So these two really are the results, of course, of longer periods of, let's say, no precipitation, which means rainfall, or very high frequency of rainfall. Yeah, so we have actually that being the major phenomena, which then again impacts in the end the businesses. And from that, we see, of course, different effects on the businesses as well. And these can be, for example, a reduction of volume and value of primary production. So that means production inputs, for example. If you're in the coffee sector, it could be that the coffee bean appears to be smaller and in less quantity. It could be in the tea sector, where we see much less, for example, flushes. We have different flushes there, and we see more and more one of them actually not appearing anymore, and that means much less seasons. And that again, of course, is detrimental to the entire sector. And it actually is the result of both floods and also of droughts. So having, let's say, in both directions, too many, let's say, heavy rainfall periods or too prolonged hot days in a row, that of course is one of the main factors when we look at production. But that's not the only thing, of course. We cannot only look at the agricultural sector. When we just look at companies who we have worked with in the processing, manufacturing, also they are suffering. And that can be, for example, overheating of production premises. So there we see much lower productivity of workers, and also, of course, overheating of machinery and equipment, which then need to be exchanged. And when we look at flooding, of course, that can also impact anything related to the company, from the warehouse being flooded to the transportation routes. And that means we cannot get products in and out of the company, but also the workers. They can mostly not reach actually the company's premises and attend their shifts. So many different ways how companies are being affected, each in their own way. And hence it's really important to look at the risks from a very specific company point of view. I always use this one example. It's not that we're all not adapted yet. We perhaps intrinsically started to be adapted to a changing climate. If we never perhaps have linked it to climate change, but it happens. So you might be the one company on the hill in a flood prone area. So when the flood comes already, let's say the company was from the beginning put on the one hill in that area and will be not affected. And that can still happen. So having really localized climate data and a localized and very specific risk assessment is very important. So that means having companies enabled to actually understand those risks is the key in order to help them going forward.
Yeah, and that this data is even only available for them in a digestible format.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, it's quite extreme when we hear Morten talk, when we hear you talk in terms of the effects that the companies are facing. I'm wondering from the small business perspective in developing countries that you're working with, and Catherine, how does it work for them to actually become more climate resilient? What are challenges that they are facing, and how are they overcoming them, for instance?
So the challenges, of course, are manifold. No, I think it starts with like the absence basically of an ecosystem which can support them. So having, as you pointed already towards climate data right away available, digestible for them is of course one big bottleneck. And again, also big business opportunity. Morten said it. We know already some good entrepreneurs who are not so much entrepreneurs anymore, but running quite large businesses, which grew immensely throughout the last years. And still, this is not, let's say, fully scaled. So the solution is there. Again, as Morten said, scalability is actually rather the issue. Then, of course, to have institutions which also support those different SMEs. That means really like having handholding in terms of understanding climate change, understanding the risks. And in some countries, yes, we see that already. So there are actually those kind of support agencies helping. These can be business associations, these can be national institutions which actually take on this job and which is key. And then, of course, we also see, let's say, stakeholders around or in the ecosystem around the companies, such as financiers, technology providers, expertise providers, lacking. That depends, of course, on the country, but having, let's say, financial products which are suitable for SMEs can be, of course, a bottleneck if they are not there. So having, let's say, not only a green credit line in general, but having that adapted to the needs of SMEs is key in order to help them then again accessing that credit or, for example, investment offering and then going forward. So small ticket sizes. And the same also for solutions which actually are made also for SMEs. So that means not the big consultancies, not the BCG only thinking about how to help the multinationals to overcome the risk, but perhaps the small one also understanding that there is a business opportunity and offering it to SMEs can be really like a game changer. And so also for technology providers, not having small scale solutions when it comes to solar, when it comes to water purification, when it comes to how to manage the waste better, that really helps. And this is most of the times not existing in the country. So these are all, let's say, systemic issues which the companies are facing. You also asked me how to overcome it. I think everyone can take their own destiny into their hands. So actually all the business leaders out there listening today in, so all you of course can drive your own efforts. You can already think, and I think again, it's very related to what has been said already about how your company actually is affected. Get the right information. It's out there, it's public. Yeah, we have national adaptation plans, we have national determined contribution plans. These are all downloadable. We have open source data. Here, a shout out to the Berkeley Earth Institute. Amazing good data available for anyone. Get this information, get it right and understand it, read into it, and it helps you a lot informing your decisions what to do. So I think that would be the first thing. Get out and just write your National Weather Institute, to get your weather data. And then understanding this data, understanding how and looking also how has climate change impacted your company in the past years. Have you seen, for example, increases in, let's say, flooding? Perhaps it was before 1 time, now it's 2 times, now it's 3 times. So most likely will continue in this way, having these scenarios, and that already can inform your decisions to investment. Let's say, to be made in order to overcome it, and then make this information digestible also, of course, for your stakeholders. That means use it to promote yourself with your buyers, use it to promote yourself with your customers, use it also to promote yourself with financiers. Yeah, very clearly stating, here's let's say a new innovation I want to implement, and I need financing for it, and articulating that with the right, let's say, financial indicators can help, and actually can be also the key in order to access all that. So the solutions are there. I think I very much like that what Morten said, the solutions are there. Of course, it's harder to access this information, I think, for depending on where you are, but it's there. Getting in touch with those companies or thinking yourself on how to innovate can actually derive huge benefits. And we have seen that really. We had the example of a textile company actually starting to import solar panels, in the end starting a second arm of their businesses. Now they don't only produce textiles, they actually got an importer for their country for solar, and they opened a consultancy helping others to install it. And that, I think, is a very nice diversification towards, let's say, green economy related services and products, and it's possible. We have seen it.
Yeah, very interesting. You already started talking about examples, and I think this is always the encouraging thing, right? It's not about preaching. There is a business case, there are examples out there, but to really give those concrete examples that can also inspire the action of other companies. You mentioned one in the textile sector, very interesting, because the textile sector is, of course, one of the most polluting ones when we look at the global comparison. Do you also have examples from other sectors, other types of companies?
Yes, of course. I mean, we have plenty of examples. I think that is not even the issue, like bringing them to light much more. And for example, we have been working very closely with a company in Kenya called Mionga Fresh Greens, and they have a very, let's say, like integrated solution for like a systemic issue within their company, that most of the times the produce they were packing and then exporting got bad. So actually from the farmers' premises towards the warehouse, there was always the issue that it would, let's say, through the heat and the transport get damaged and they had to throw it away. So the problem started not really with climate change, but rather, let's say, with perhaps increased heat and the transport in itself. And of course, then the huge costs of having that firstly harvested, packaged, and then losing it along the way. And they would, they have different, let's say, products they make out of the fruits and veg they are buying. And one of them, of course, is, or the biggest one, is snacks. So from dried, for example, mangoes. And hence the idea was how to, on the one hand, reduce the food waste, or on the other hand, also not use any more gas-powered dryers, which is also very contaminating, but instead start, let's say, at the premises of the farmers. And they started implementing let's say, a system of satellite trucks which go out to the farmers. They solar dry basically all of the fruits and veg on site. So basically they're skilled up the different farmers they work with. They get the products now fully dried, ready to be packaged to their warehouse. And that was a great solution, very much integrated into their businesses and solving many different issues they were facing. So food waste has been reduced, their carbon footprint has been reduced, and actually they have upskilled all the farmers they work with. So it can be really different. You see, very different from the textile example. But most of the times you see the solution solving different issues and opening other opportunities as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for providing this also from a different sector, from a different geography. I think this really speaks to the global nature of the topic that we're talking about, and that, everybody really has a stake in this. So with this, first of all, thank you for your contributions already. We're moving on, let's say, to the next stage of our discussion. Because we're opening up to questions from the audience. So just a shout out to everybody that is listening in at the moment online. Please do feel free to submit your questions via the chat so that, that we can pick them up here. I wanted to ask one question also to Morten, because Morten, you've talked a lot about the decarbonization side of your business, but I'm sure there is also the adaptation side to this. especially in the logistics sector, where, you know, and Catherine, you talked about all these extreme weather events, etc. That must have an impact on logistics at large, right? Are there any experiences that you can share, and also, you know, how Maersk is dealing with them as a multinational company?
So I think when you clearly there are more extreme weather events now than has been in the past. I think the logistics industry is an industry plagued by exemptions, right? So challenges. It can be weather, it can be a strike, it can be fog, it can be many different things. So it's just an industry that is really around to deal with that complexity. But and you know, we have sailed the 7 seas for more than 100 years, so we've seen our fair share of bad weather. So I think and it's not something that is changing overnight, right? But it is getting worse. And I think just speaking to Anne-Catherine talked a lot about the risks here. I think the one thing that makes it very clear to me that these risks are real is the fact that the financial communities are really zooming in on the effects of climate change and really putting pressure on companies to do something. And that is, of course, not just because they want to make the world a better place. It's also because they can see that there's just more risk in their investments. And therefore, they are forcing. And when you see BlackRock and other big investors, I mean, again, I'm sure that they're good human beings and they want to do something good for the planet. But they are also doing it simply because it makes financial sense to start addressing and mitigating these risks. So this is for real. I mean, this is here. This is not this is not just a buzzword. This really is. And I would just also add, and also just building on Charlene's business, I think, so I talked a lot about climate change, and I do think that is our biggest problem right now. It's our most urgent problem, but something like biodiversity, that is coming. I mean, I would almost guarantee you that we have a lot of focus now on climate, and also because climate can be measured, we can measure emissions, so that's why the finance guys, they like that, because then they can, you know, beat you in the head with something concrete. But I have no doubt that there will be similar efforts in terms of all biodiversity and potentially also other of these ESG factors, right? I mean, the business paradigm is changing, and it's a paradigm shift. And again, you all run businesses. You better, I mean, you better prepare for it and capitalize on it, because that is so we are seeing it. But actually, you know, it's the physical parts of it is, yes, we can feel them, but we've had storms and that sort of things for many years, right? But it is definitely becoming worse, and right now the logistics industry is under enormous pressure from these things.
Yeah, you just raised the topic of biodiversity, and that was actually also something that came up in the audience. Charlene, maybe an interesting question for you as well, in relation to the microbiome and how that relates to biodiversity. I'm sure there are very direct links between that. Huh?
Yes. Yes, of course. So every species, every plants, every animals, and even every human has their own microbiome diversity profile. For example, apple is one of the fruit. It consists more than like 300 bacteria, apple itself. But banana, maybe 100, and grapes is around like 200. So every living thing has its own unique microbiome composition. So the key is when we are expose ourselves in terms of diet and environment to something that is diverse. For example, in Indonesia is one of the nation with the highest biodiversity, right? Our diet is also very diverse. Even Indonesian salad consists at least 7 types of vegetables, right? So when we maintain our biodiversity in our environment, it means that our selection of diets become more diverse. And the more diverse we eat, the more diverse our gut microbiome, and it means that our immunity became better. So human immunity, planet resilience, and biodiversity is linearly correlated. So by making a simple step like consume everything that is microbiome friendly, we preserve the tiniest creature, the microbiome. It also means that we preserve the bigger species like the plants, the animals, and by preserving the plants and animals, we preserve the ecosystem as a whole, right? And by preserving the ecosystem as a whole, we sustaining our life by securing the clean water as well as by securing the carbon balance to be intact.
Yeah, very, very clear. And maybe after this panel, I would really like to ask you as well, did you adjust anything for yourself? Because you know of all of these relationships. Maybe one last question to the entire panel. We've talked a lot about the action that every single company can take on this topic. And at the same time, it's not evident that, you know, companies can succeed by themselves, especially for the ones in developing countries. They lack resources, they might lack access to information, necessary skills. So, and we're coming back, it's a big part of our work, connecting to the stakeholders that can support companies in this. I'm giving this question to all of you. What do you think, for instance, what is the role of policy in this context? Martin, you already talked about the role of financial institutions, also their requirements. There are many different stakeholders. So anything that you would like to share on this?
I can maybe give it a shot. So I mean, obviously, it's easier if you're based in Stockholm than if you are based in Indonesia. You just have more willing customers, right? For whatever reasons. But I do actually think that this is an area where businesses will run ahead of regulators. I mean, I don't think we can. I mean, it'll come for sure. And we've actually, our CEO actually has advocated that our industry get taxed $150 per ton of CO2, simply to drive that. But I think it will come later, and businesses will drive this. And I think it's, of course, it's not easier, but again, if you can identify a problem you can solve for a customer, and it is a real problem, and you can solve it, you can also, I mean, there's so much money that wants to go into this. I mean, there's nothing easier to fund than anything with a green/climate profile, right? So again, when I see a lot of the things out there raising money, I mean, a lot of them do it on, you know, a great idea, a little bit of technology, and then typically an amazing team. And that's also how big companies invest, right? They invest in the team actually more than anything. You obviously need a good business model and some technology, but it's actually typically, you know, the quality of the team that is the final decision, right? So again, don't hold back. I mean, if you have a great idea, if you can solve a problem for your customers, yeah, it's not easy. Nothing is easy when you're building a business. I think you all know that. But there's money out there, and there's a lot of money that wants to invest in this. So again, I would not suggest anybody sit and wait for regulators. And also, as a small business, you cannot influence that in any way, right? You can just sit and passively and wait. I think you need to look at what you can do, and then of course, getting timing right is key. But I think if you look back, history has taught us that things typically move faster than you think. So again, you know, try to be one step ahead all the time. But of course, you need to get the timing right. But this is moving fast at the moment. This space is moving very fast. So customer centricity is my best advice, to be honest.
I really hear that as a call for action, and yeah. Also conscious of time, is there any final key message that also Charlene and Catherine that you want to give before we close?
Yeah, I think regarding the importance of the policy, one thing specific in Indonesia, like we cannot go into the policymaker explaining about how microbiome is important and you have to endorse us. That there's no way. What we can do is we create the demand from the consumers. We create the demand, we keep tracking the growth until a point when the regulator finally see, okay, this is something interesting and something to be supported or even regulated. So that's my closing remarks, I think.
Thank you, Charlene.
Yes, and I would like to hop on this, what Charlene says, so informing and sensitizing basically your customers. That's, I think, what also happened a lot across Europe, where Morten says, no, you will find your customer more easily because we have been influenced. And actually, that's also what regulators do. They don't only pass laws, they also have, let's say, massive campaigns behind sensitizing us in our daily life. And I think that is something in some of the countries we are working in still missing. So that can have a huge effect. I think we saw, for example, the outphasing of the plastic bags in Kenya, for example, really sensitizing population. We have seen many other policies being passed across the globe now. And even if those are just very tiny ones, but when they affect our daily life, they can be very effective in informing, let's say, our decisions in any other aspect. So I think that is actually a good starting point for policymakers, besides, of course, passing the right laws and incentives also for companies to take action.
Yeah, great. I think we really have in this panel key messages for all stakeholders in the game, just the last ones for the policymakers, but most importantly, of course, for the businesses and really the opportunities that we see in there. And we have Charlene, we have Maersk as leaders in that space. So with that, a great thank you to the three speakers here today. It was really a pleasure to speak to you about this imminent, urgent, and new innovative topic. So with this, over to Kriti. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Annegret. And I do echo exactly what you said. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. We touched upon so many relevant topics. We spoke about stakeholders. We spoke about what is important, what's urgent. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for the amazing, amazing notes. And I think all of us have a lot to take away from this discussion today. Just in the interest of time, I'll take maybe final 2 quick minutes to talk about what's coming up next. So I hope everyone can see my screen. Just, yeah, okay, perfect. 1 second, yes. So for all of you who are interested in learning more about this topic, very, very important topic, it's important for you to participate in this very timely, very important e-learning course curated by our very own Green to Compete experts who have joined us here today. So thank you very much. This course is important for you to understand what is the impact of climate change on your companies, how can you respond to it, how can you come up with a climate responsive and a resilient strategy. Green finance, again, a very important topic. It also came up in the chat box today, along with very dynamic, innovative case studies. So make sure you are taking part in this e-learning course. This is available for free as a UN public good on our platform, SME Trade Academy. There's a link to join this on your screen, but we're also sharing this in the chat box. And for all of you actually joining us here today who are registered for SheTrades, Road to SheTrades Global, you will be automatically enrolled in this e-learning course. So make sure you are sharing this link among your peers and your networks who would be interested as well. Now, what is next? So we spoke about the e-learning course already. We will be back again on July 21st, and our theme will focus more on digital strategy in the post-COVID world. So make sure you're registering, make sure you are taking note of all the reminders that we send you. We will also be sending you the recording and the slide deck that we used today. So do not worry in case your internet was erratic, you were not able to follow. You will have this recording for a later access as well. And just as a concluding message, make sure that you're aware of the 2 different links that we have. So right now we are curating and we are hosting our Road to SheTrades Global program, but our annual event, SheTrades Global, is happening from the 17th to 19th of October. Make sure you're using the right registration link to attend and participate in this amazing, amazing event, happening hybrid actually in Dubai at Expo 2020, but also virtually for those of us who cannot attend the event in person. So with that, thank you very much again. A big thanks to our speakers. Thank you very much, Annegret, for the lovely discussion, for moderating the, everything so well. And thank you to all our wonderful participants for tuning in. And we'll see you again very soon. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach us. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks for inviting us. Bye.
Bye.